Welcome to a new episode of Cultivate, and today we have Htoo Wah from the Evergreen Community Church joining us. And so, Htoo Wah, we're going to jump right into it. Tell us a bit about yourself, just for the people who don't know you who are listening to this podcast.
My name is Htoo Wah, and I am part of the Evergreen Community Church, and I attend Panther Lake Community Church as well. And I am currently in a transition of my life where I am seeking more spiritual guidance, and so I am attending a Western seminary to, help out the things that I can at my church. And one of the things that I'm looking forward is to serve in a youth ministry settings, and so that's where my focus is on right now currently.
So before we get into some questions I wanted to ask you, I want to share a bit about my own personal journey learning about Burma. When I became American Baptist, I discovered that there's a lot of American Baptists who are from Burma. But I remember just saying Burmese, the Burmese people. But I didn't realize how complex and diverse it is. That when I say Burma churches, Burmese is just a part of it. There's different cultures, languages, Chin, Kachin, Karen, Kareni, so forth. And so I'm kind of going on a journey myself. So, a lot of why I wanted to interview you today was to learn more about your experience and, continue to help teach me and the other people who are maybe listening to the podcast. So I thought could you tell us a bit about your experience of coming to America and how that came about from where you came from?
So in Burma, there's definitely a lot of ethnic, and a lot of the Baptist denomination from Burma is the root of missionaries who were the first to, for example, the Karen history. Judson, a Baptist missionary was what caused a great, revival in our Karen people. And my family wanted to come to the United States because back home there's lots of life is hard, I guess you can say, and there's lots of civil war going on still today and back then. And there's lots of persecution of Christians as well back in my country. And, for my parents, their goal for wanting to come to the United States was for me and my sister to have a life of abundance, you can say. And their faith is also a big part of my upbringing and, of my spiritual growth because of my parents, I am here today and I'm able to experience life in a new way, but also reflecting back in the life where, I kind of grew up in the refugee camps. So I came to the United States when I was 8. So I was in a weird time of transitioning into a new lifestyle that I was completely unaware of. But the more I think back, the more I am connected to my people back home. And living in a new culture, in a new setting, definitely changes how you see yourself and how you see the world and how you identify yourself as. And, as a Karen person in America, not a lot of people know about my ethnicity, and so sometimes you have a discussion about who you are, and it's just that you feel a sense of being invincible in a sense that, not seen, but as you explain who you are, there's a joy in that as well, in being able to tell people who you are and where you came from and what's your story. So,
Man, that's an incredible experience. So basically growing up in a refugee camp, coming to America, that's a really big shift, right? So we're not just talking about language and culture, but just even the environment that you're in. You were in kind of a place of persecution, threat of safety, coming to America. What do you think was most helpful for you making that big transition from from what you were doing in Burma to where you are now today?
I get a lot of stories being told by my mother and how life was back then, and how, it's a day-to-day struggle, but I think for me, I had it a little bit more easy, I guess you can say, because I was being brought to America at a younger age. So I didn't really experience the full extent of, what was it like truly like to actually grew up in the camp, as in for a long period of time, because some people are going to be at the refugee camp for almost the rest of their lives. And, to get out of that, life, where can you go, when there's, wars and, there's no place to call home in a sense. So you have to, go wherever you can to be in a safe place. And so for being in a new place, in a new country, I guess you can say there is, much more opportunities, more, choices and greater opportunities for being able to live the American dream. And, but at the same time, when I think back to my roots, I still think about what would it be like, if I was still back home today, it would be totally a different lifestyle for sure. And I'm blessed that, I'm here, but at the same time, I'm also like grieving for my people back home. So it's not an easy transition. So at all, because for me, when I first came here, my mom said I would cry. The language barrier was there, and I was in ELA learning classes, English classes for all the way almost up until high school. It wasn't until like in my college years have I really been able to build up my confidence and being able to communicate effectively. So it's lots of struggle between learning more about this country and this culture and learning about my own culture as well.
So I'm Korean Canadian, and my father came over as a missionary in 1974-ish, and it was interesting. They told me about this story. When they immigrated over, my mom and my dad sat by this bridge, like in rural Canada and Alberta, and they were on this bridge and they just started weeping and weeping because they realized we can't go back. Like, we've given up everything to get here. For them, it was a calling. There's a whole generation of Korean Americans who came over in the 70s. And if you're immigrating at that time, it's the stakes are really high. So for me as a Korean North American, I think there's a whole generation, what we call like the second generation in Korean culture, where we feel this pressure that our parents sacrificed so much so that we could have a better life. And I sometimes feel that pressure even on myself, even though my parents had like different standards, like, because they came for a very spiritual calling reason. But my other friends feel like this pressure, like I gotta be a doctor or a lawyer because my parents gave up so much. I was wondering, do you feel that pressure as well? Like, and maybe people in your generation, that knowing, what your parents have gone through, like just the awfulness that's all going on in Burma, do you feel that pressure in your own context?
The abundance in being in America is that life is comfortable. And when you are given so much great opportunities, education, healthcare, and all the other things, it's easy to take those things for granted. And I feel like for me, there were moments in my life where I was thinking about myself only. But being reminded that really, how did you get here? We all come from a place where it's related to war and conflict, refugees. So we need to, in a sense, be reminded of the gift that our parents have given us, in a sense. Their sacrifices. Now, I see my parent working hard every day, and I see other parents in the current community working hard every day. And, let their sacrifice not be in vain, and try to live your best life. And they have strong faith. The parents have strong faith. And for us to lose the faith that our parents have, in a sense, as well, and how they're encouraged and how they found hope. Like for us, we need to also be reminded of, hey, what about our hope? Is our hope the same as our parents? Is our dream the same as our parents, for us to live well and to live in peace?
This is interesting. This is an interesting parallel I saw with like my Korean upbringing. So like you and I are actually, I guess, sort of similar generations. I guess in some Korean circles, they call you 1.5 because you grew up somewhere else and then came over. But because both of our parents, came from their original cultures and then we transplanted, it's interesting in the Korean community church, what I've seen in the Korean community is that the faith is like really not just like a church, but it's like the center of their community, right? Their relationship. So for me, growing up in Canada, there weren't a lot of Korean people at the time. Now there are, but at that time there wasn't. So the only place we could really meet other people like us, who could speak like us, eat the same food as us, was at church. Church was so much more than just, Sunday worship, right? We'd stay there all day, we'd eat food if there were needs in the community. And I see this sort of in the Korean community church is that, when you folks gather, it's not just like, okay, I'll see you for an hour on Sunday and then see you later. But like, you folks are really interconnected, not just spiritually, but connected relationally, even economically, like you're helping each other with jobs. So I thought maybe tell us a bit about how those all come together in your community at Korean Community Church.
Yeah. No, our Korean people, as small as we are and as few as we are in America, our numbers are increasing. But at the same time, a lot of our community, our unity is that it's not just based on our ethnicity, it's based off our faith practice as well. We do a lot of things together, like when we have Sunday worship or church home services, we gather as a community, we pray as a community, we give thanks to God as a community, and we also do things as a community, because without support from community members, for example, when we first came to America, my family and Pastor Maggie's family, we support one another, and the community grew because we supported one another. Because coming to a country where we don't speak the same languages, and there's lots of barriers. The only way we can seek help is from one another, in a sense.
For both of us, like sometimes when I met folks like who have a more Western American Euro background, like they might not kind of realize just like how tight and serious it is. Is like church is the center of everything we do, right? To be a leader in the church is like you're a leader in the community in a lot of ways. I wonder if you had this and if you wanted to speak into this, but I remember sometimes, we've been talking about more in a positive sense, but in a negative sense, sometimes there is also this pressure is that church was also a place where like you've got to go to this church to keep your Korean heritage, right? Like keep speaking Korean. And then I would find with some young people, like I'm developing my own faith. Like I'm also here to learn about God. It's not just about, my culture. I would get the pressure from the older generation, like to just partake because it's about culture. Do you feel some of that pressure, like trying to balance why we come to church? Like sometimes it gets lost.
I definitely feel the pressure, especially for my parents. It's like, I'm going to seminary, but at the same time, my parents kind of say like, well, if you're going to serve in a Korean community church, you should be able to at least speak, read, and write in Korean, so in a sense. And because it is a Korean church, the primarily language is Korean. For me, the important things is, the culture aspect is a huge part on our connection with our church as well. My generation, for example, I think the identity part is important, but it's good to discern, church and culture, how sometimes those things intermix to the point where it's becomes a kind of pressure conflict kind of thing. In a sense, for the younger generation, for example, they grew up and they can't understand service in Korean. So then the pressure would be for the parents to kind of nudge their kids a little bit to hey, maybe learn your language and other culture aspects of things. I think there's a positive and a negative in a sense that being in America, we're kind of independent kind of minded a little bit, but our parents only, I think, they want the best for us as well.
And I think it comes from a very well-meaning place. Fast forwarding, because I feel like a lot of East Asian cultures, are like, maybe third, second, third, fourth generation. So they're a little farther along in the immigration history compared to like Burma people. And what I found in the Korean church is those like kids like me who grew up, what happened was they discovered that the parents had imported 1970s Korea, And so it was like this time warp, and they kept trying to preserve that culture. But it got to the point when the kids grew up, they were like, look, this isn't, we respect it, we came from that, but we can't speak that anymore. It's not our culture, but we want to develop our faith. But there's no place for us in the church anymore because you're trying to preserve this 1970s, whatever the time was when they immigrated, right? And so what ended up happening was a lot of Korean Americans, Korean Canadians, they left the church to make their own churches or even just go to another church or no church at all because they had no space. And that's a really good lesson for us, thinking about, for every generation, are we letting people come as they are, like let them have their own space? Like you were just talking about, if I can't understand the language of worship, like, yes, like I need to step up and maybe learn some Korean, but are there ways that the church can also kind of acknowledge I'm a little different, and is there a space for me? And that's, I think, always like a tricky balance. So I'm excited to see what happens with the Korean church going forward in that way. I thought it'd be interesting for me, because you have a heart for ministry, which I think is amazing. So you're kind of holding this tension, right? Like you can still speak Korean, fluently. You speak English very well. You have this love for your culture, your background, but then you also have a love for God and for ministry. So from your really interesting vantage point, like what are your hopes and dreams for Korean young adults like you?
For our Korean young adults, remember your parents' faith in Christ Jesus and the salvation in Jesus and His grace and mercy. So we come to church, but make sure to develop your faith. And I want us to have hope in the future and for our spiritual side as well. For our culture and our identity and back home, my hope for my generation is that we would not forget, in a sense, who we are and where we came from, but to also pray for our people so that they may receive freedom, peace, and change in where our parents are praying for change, and we feel it too. We see the headlines in the news of the conflicts that's happening in our country, and there's much like opportunities for us, for my generation, even though we may now be transitioning or living a new life, right? For speaking for our Korean people or younger people in America, we have lots of things that we can do to help our families now, to help our country now, and to help develop ourselves too. We may face many challenges, of course, and sometimes it's, conflict with different cultures, but at the same time, a lot of our parents teach us to respect your elders, all those great things that they teach us, just don't forget those things. And I guess learn and reflect is, but there's much great hope for as long as we continue to.
Like, what would you love to see happen in Korean churches in America? Like, if there's one thing, I could ask you, like, this is something I'd really love to see happen or develop more in Korean churches doing ministry here in America. Is there something that comes to mind?
I think for me, since first generation, second generation, like a lot of the kids who are being born in America now, and a lot of the younger kids, and even in my generation, even though we, can still speak our languages, we gravitate towards our, the English. For the churches, I think what I want to see is the acceptance that change is going to happen. And we need to realize that change is not always bad, but it also means that we need to focus, and special attentions to the youth. Because I think for me, like one of the main reasons for ministry is the youth. How how do we help our youth navigate the change in how we attend church? And but the main thing is to make sure that they receive Christ in church, but so that wherever they go, wherever they may be, they will be able to love each other, love God, love neighbor.
Yeah, well said. And I do want to say for like some of our listeners here, as you say that though, because I get to see all the caucuses, the Euro caucus, the Black caucus churches, the Asian caucus, the Hispanic caucus. And I want to say that probably the highest ratio of like retaining youth and having youth not just attending, but actively involved in ministry is probably in our Burma churches. I kind of want to say this to all my Evergreen friends and beyond, is that I think we could learn a lot from our Burma churches, like the Korean Community Church. Like you guys have vibrant youth, young adult. I know sometimes it doesn't feel like that, but I love it, like whenever I visit. And I would really encourage other people not to feel like, how can we help Korean Community Church? I kind of want to tell people like, oh, we should all just like sit and listen and watch, because I think they're really learning how to do what you're talking about, accepting change, realizing that change isn't a bad thing, and how do you deal with it. And the way that you empower young adults, and I mean, even you and all the work that you're doing at the Korean Community Church and even at Panther Lake, I mean, it's really something that people should be taking notice of. So that's partly why I wanted to invite you to this podcast, to bring more awareness to that. So thank you for all that you're doing. We're really excited for all the stuff that's happening in your church and the things to come. So thanks for being a part of our podcast.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again, and we will see you soon in our next episode. Take care.